Today, we're diving into a powerful lesson in human relations that honestly feels a little backwards at first. We're talking about the art of winning by choosing not to fight at all.
I want you to really think about that for a second. Picture that moment. You did it. You proved your point. You had the facts, the logic. You were undeniably correct, but you could just feel the energy in the room shift. It got colder, right? You won the battle, for sure, but you lost something way more valuable, that connection with the other person. That exact feeling, that's what we're unpacking today.
So let's kick things off with a story that just perfectly captures this whole dilemma, this deep-seated human need to prove we are right, and the surprising hidden cost that comes with it.
Okay, so picture this. We're at a super fancy banquet in London, right after World War I. The guest of honor is Sir Ross Smith, this legendary Australian pilot who was basically a rock star for flying halfway across the globe. The whole vibe is celebratory, very high society. So during dinner, the guy sitting next to our narrator tells a story and drops a famous quote. But he gets it wrong. He says it's from the Bible. And our narrator knows, he knows with 100% certainty that's not right. The line is from Shakespeare.
And right there, we have a standoff. The other man is insistent. He knows he's right. But our narrator, well, he can't help himself. He needs to correct him, to show off what he knows, to display his superiority, as he put it. So now you have two people, both absolutely dug in, completely positive they are correct. So to settle this, they decide to ask an expert. And as luck would have it, our narrator's old friend, Frank Gammond, who has spent his entire life studying Shakespeare, is sitting right there at the table. Our guy is practically rubbing his hands together, thinking, "Oh, this is perfect. Victory is mine." And then the verdict comes. Gammond listens patiently and says, "Our narrator is wrong. The gentleman is right." But here's the kicker. As he says it, he delivers a swift, hard kick to our guy's shin under the table. A secret message. Something else is going on. Our narrator is just floored, publicly shamed, even though he knows he was right. Later that night, Gammon explains everything. He says, yeah, of course the quote was from Hamlet. We both knew that. But we were guests at a party. Why on earth would you try to humiliate a man just to prove a trivial point? Is that going to make him like you? And then he gives him this piece of advice he never forgot. Always avoid the acute angle. That sharp, direct, head-on confrontation. And that story is just the perfect launch pad for our central idea today. The paradox that, when you really think about it, arguments are basically impossible to truly win.
Look, it really boils down to this. Arguing is a lose-lose proposition. If you lose the argument, well, you lose. Pretty simple. But here's the thing we always forget. What happens when you win? You might feel that rush of being right for a second, but what you've really done is made the other person feel inferior. You've hurt their pride, and they will resent you for it. So you win the point, but you lose the person.
There's this old saying that just nails it. You can't force someone to change their mind. You might beat them with logic and facts, you might silence them, but you haven't actually convinced them. All you've done is create resentment, which probably just makes them dig their heels in even more.
Okay, so if arguing is a losing game, then what's the alternative? Let's check out two real-world stories that show the incredible power of doing the complete opposite. Just agreeing. All right, first up, let's meet Patrick O'Hare. Pat sold trucks, and by his own admission, he loved a good fight. You know the type. He loved to argue, to scrap, and it was absolutely destroying his career. So his old method was totally predictable. A potential customer would say something bad about his trucks, and Pat would immediately see red and just attack. He'd argue every little point. And what was the result? The customer would get defensive, the walls would go up, and Pat would walk away without a sale. Every single time. But then he learned this lesson. He learned to avoid that acute angle. Now, when a prospect says, hey, your competitor's truck is better, Pat's first move is to agree. He says something like, you know what, the Who's It is a good truck. They're a good company. And just like that, poof, the argument is gone before it even starts. The customer's guard comes down, and what was a confrontation becomes a real conversation, which more often than not ends in a sale. Now, for our second case, the stakes are even higher. We have a tax consultant, Frederick Parsons, who's in a fight with a government tax inspector over $9 grand. He described this inspector as cold, arrogant, and stubborn. For a full hour, Parsons threw facts and logic at him, but the inspector just got more and more rigid. He knew he had to try something else.
So instead of fighting, Parsons just stopped. He completely changed his tune. He looked at the inspector and said this, acknowledging the guy's real-world, hands-on experience. He wasn't being fake. He was genuinely shifting his perspective and validating the inspector's importance.
And the effect was immediate. It was like flipping a switch. The inspector, who no longer felt like he had to defend his authority, just relaxed. His ego was soothed. He started talking about his work, his whole tone became friendly, and a few days later, he called Parsons to say he'd decided to rule in his favor. An argument could never have achieved that. All of these stories are pointing to one single, incredibly powerful conclusion, and it's one that has been echoed by some of the wisest people throughout history. So let's bring it all home. As Benjamin Franklin put it so brilliantly, you really have a choice. You can go for that temporary, theatrical win of proving a point, or you can aim for something much more lasting, a person's goodwill. But what he's saying is, you can almost never have both. Abraham Lincoln had this fantastic, gritty metaphor for the same idea. Sure, you might have the right of way, but is it worth getting bitten by a dog just to prove it? Because even if you win the fight, the bite still hurts. Some battles, even if you're 100% in the right, just aren't worth the damage they cause. So after all of this, the fancy banquet, the truck salesman, the tax inspector, it all boils down to one simple truth. There is only one surefire way to get the best of an argument. You avoid it. That's it. That's the secret. The only way to truly win is to refuse to play the game in the first place. It's about choosing connection over conflict and understanding over being right. And that really is the question I want to leave you with. It's that choice Ben Franklin laid out. The next time you feel that urge, that fire in your belly to correct someone, to prove your point, just take a breath and ask yourself, what do I really want to win here? An empty victory or a person's goodwill? The choice is always yours. Thanks for joining me.